This story was sent to me by someone named Kevin, and what he shared gave me actual chills. He swears it's real, and after hearing what happened, I believe him. Here's what he told Min, his own words. The place had been shut down since the early 90s. But some property management companies still owned the building and needed someone to watch over it. You know, keep vagrants out, prevent copper theft, that kind of thing. I was working security at an abandoned textile factory just outside Springfield, Missouri. I used to take the night shift, midnight to 6 in the morning. It was boring as hell, but quiet. I actually didn't mind it. Every old building does, right? Supposedly some workers died in a fire there back in the 70s. Some people said the basement was haunted. But honestly, I didn't care. I'm not superstitious. I've worked plenty of places that felt weird. You get used to it. I'd park my truck inside the main gate, grab my flashlight and thermos, and do a slow walk of the perimeter once every couple of hours. Closer this time, not wind, not just a draft. It felt like I walked into a damn refrigerator. My breath was fogging. It's not an animal. Security. If someone's in here, say something. It was a voice. A woman's voice. The basement was always off limits. Even my supervisor told me never to go down there. It said the stairs were unsafe, and the whole thing was structurally unstable. But now, hearing that voice, something inside me said I had to check it out. If someone was down there and hurt, I couldn't just leave them. It said, help me. It was rusty, but unlocked. As I opened it, the hinges let out the worst screech I'd ever heard, like something dying. I gripped the railing with one hand and held the flashlight tight in the other. Most of the time I'd sit inside the little office trailer near the north loading dock, drinking coffee and listening to the radio. Nothing, now. I knew going in that the place had stories attached to it. But what happened during my second week on the job? That still keeps me up sometimes. It's just darkness and the sound of water dripping somewhere below me. It was a Thursday night. The air was thick, warm, and quiet. Around 2:30 a.m., I was doing my second perimeter walk. I'd just come around the far end of the factory, near the old freight elevator, when I heard it. Didn't even look back. I slammed the stairwell door shut and locked it behind me, heart pounding, sweat pouring down my back. At first, I thought it was just the wind pushing through the busted windows like a low whistle. But then I heard what sounded like a soft voice, whispering. I froze and turned my flashlight in the direction of the sound, sweeping across broken brick walls and patches of tall grass. So I called out, hello? You all right in there? Nothing. Then I heard it again. Now, I've dealt with squatters before. I figured maybe someone got in through a broken panel or cracked loading door. I stepped inside through the open side door and immediately felt a drop in temperature. Hello? I called out again. That's when I heard it again, soft, pleading. Please, help me. This time, it was definitely coming from below me. From the basement. Now, I don't scare easy, but I hesitated. I found the stairwell door in the east hallway. The stairs were steep, narrow, and damp. About halfway down, the light flickered. I stopped and banged the flashlight against my hand. It stabilized for a second, then went out completely, pitch black. No moonlight, no emergency lights, nothing. Then I heard it again, closer now. Please, come closer. This time, it wasn't scared. It sounded hungry. The air turned foul, like rotting meat. And I heard something move at the bottom of the stairs, slow dragging footsteps on the cement. I turned and bolted. I ran to the trailer, locked the door, and sat there until dawn with a knife in my hand and every light on. When I reported it the next morning, my boss just looked at me and said, "You opened the basement door." I nodded. He sighed and said, "You're lucky it didn't follow you." I never went back. And to this day, I still wonder what the hell was waiting for me down there, because I swear, whatever it was, it knew my name. This story was sent to me by Brandon S., who swears this terrifying encounter happened one rainy night in upstate Pennsylvania. Let's hear it in his own words. All right, so this happened about 3 years ago, but I still get chills just thinking about it. I used to live in this tiny rental house on the edge of a wooded area. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom place with a creaky old porch and a gravel driveway that never got fixed properly. And all I wanted was to crash on the couch with some pizza and bad movies. Around 11 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. I live pretty far from town, and all my friends know better than to show up unannounced, especially that late. So I got up, Peeked out the window, nothing. Porch light was flickering, thanks to some electrical issues I'd been meaning to fix. But I could see enough to know there was no car in the driveway, no footsteps on the gravel. Not a soft knock either. It was firm, like someone who really wanted to be let in. I liked the isolation, though. It was quiet, peaceful. Most nights, I'd sit on the porch with a beer and listen to the rain or the wind blowing through the trees. But that night was different. It was a Friday. I remember because I'd just finished a long week at work. Can I just come in for a minute? Now, that was weird. His face was shadowed by a hood, but I could see he wasn't that old. This time I noticed his teeth. They looked off. Like they weren't human, too many of them. Or too sharp, I don't know. I slammed the door shut without another word and locked it. You don't have to be afraid. I just want to come in. He'd be late 30s. He smiled, not a friendly smile, more like the kind that makes your stomach twist. I wasn't expecting anyone. I should have just ignored it. That happens sometimes out there, but now of all times. I could hear him walking back and forth on the porch. Slow footsteps. Deliberate. Like he was waiting for me to make a mistake. Finally, I peeked through the blinds and he was gone. But something about the knock, like he wasn't shivering. And he kept glancing past me into the house, like he was looking for something or someone. The rain had mostly washed everything away. But I saw something strange. On the porch, right by the door, there were 2 perfect, dry boot prints. Like someone had been standing there all night without moving an inch. And the weird part, they weren't wet. They were dusty, as if he'd brought in dust from somewhere else entirely. There's a gas station about 5 miles down the road. It didn't feel right. I opened the door a crack, just enough to speak through. Hello? There was a man standing there, tall, drenched from the rain. I need to use your phone, he said. My car broke down, no signal. It was raining hard, and he was soaked to the bone. But still, something felt off. I'm sorry, I said, but I don't let strangers in. He cut me off. There's something wrong with the road, he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. And then he smiled again. Seconds later, the knock came again. Louder this time, angry. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. He started talking through the woodcom like before. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911, but of course no signal. Then it went silent. No more footsteps.
Ow.
No voice. I waited, holding my breath for what felt like forever. Just like that. I waited another hour before I finally fell asleep on the couch, gripping a kitchen knife. The next morning, I walked outside to check for footprints. I never saw him again. Moved out 2 months later. But every time it rains and I hear a knock that I'm not expecting, I remember that smile. And those teeth. I don't know what he was. But I know he wasn't human. This story was sent to me by Megan T., who says this horrifying event happened when she was traveling for work. Let's listen in her own words. Okay. I don't usually talk about this. Mostly because people look at me like I'm crazy when I do. But I swear to you, every word of this actually happened. I used to travel a lot for work, mostly overnight conferences and training events in other states. I had a booking at this old hotel right off the highway, not a chain. It's one of those locally owned places with floral wallpaper and keys that still jingle on metal rings. It wasn't my first time staying there, but I'd never been given that room before. You'd think that would sound exciting, but honestly, most of it was just lonely. Lots of hotel rooms, lots of vending machine dinners. Anyway, this happened about a year ago in Tennessee. Room 213. The guy at the front desk seemed hesitant when he handed me the key. Like, just for a second, he looked unsure. When I got to the door, the key stuck. I told myself I was being paranoid, dropped my bag on the chair, and flopped onto the bed. I had to jiggle it a few times before it finally turned. But then he smiled again, real quick, and said something like, "Hope you get some rest," but it wasn't positioned quite right. Didn't reflect the room directly like. I could see parts of the ceiling, like there's a weight in the room that wasn't there before. I turned around instantly, but nothing was there. I kept tossing and turning, and every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear faint breathing. Not mine. Not next door. I wasn't sobbing or anything, but my eyes just started leaking, like my body was reacting to something my mind couldn't process. Just breathing, and door that shouldn't have been in frame. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt off, crooked, or warped. He looked up slowly and said, Room 213 again? I should have asked for another room, but I was tired and honestly I didn't care. The elevator was broken, so I dragged my little suitcase up to flights of creaky carpeted stairs, drove an hour to the next town, slept in my car. First thing I noticed, it smelled wrong, not dirty. It's not moldy, just wrong. It's like dust and old wood and something slightly metallic underneath. That's when I noticed the mirror. There was this big old mirror hanging on the wall opposite the bed. I threw a towel over it and told myself I was just being silly. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of noise, no. The room was dead silent, but because it felt like something was watching me. You ever get that feeling? At around 3 a.m., I sat up in bed. A towel had fallen off the mirror. And in the reflection, I saw someone standing at the foot of the bed. I swear to God, there was a figure tall, completely still. I couldn't see its face. It's just the shape. When I looked back at the mirror, it was empty too. That's when I started crying. I don't know why. I packed my stuff in 5 minutes flat, didn't even change clothes, just zipped my suitcase and walked out. As I passed the front desk, the same guy was still there, just sitting like he'd been waiting for me. I stopped dead. "What do you mean again?" He looked at me with the saddest eyes and said, "You're the third one this month." I left. I tried to find that hotel online later just to check reviews, maybe see if others had experienced something similar, but it was gone. Nothing came up, like it never existed. I don't travel for work anymore, not because of what I saw, but because I'm afraid one day I'll see that room again. And this time, I won't be able to leave. This story was sent to me by Daniel M., who says this happened during his time as a medical student. Let's listen in his own words. "I was in my final year of medical school when I saw something that made me question everything I believed about reality. It happened during my clinical rotation at a psychiatric hospital outside of Boston. I won't say the name of the place, but it was old, built in the early 1900s. With long stone hallways and creaky wooden doors that never quite shut all the way. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. I had the overnight shift, shadowing the on-call psychiatrist. We mostly checked on patients who were considered stable, but still required supervision. Folks dealing with chronic conditions like depression, schizophrenia, things like that. But then there was room 9. It was down a short hallway with a red exit sign above it, the kind of hallway that looks like staff only, but isn't locked. A chair in the corner, and a man, just sitting there. You'd miss it if you weren't looking. Room 9 wasn't on the official chart. It wasn't assigned to anyone. Only found it because I got lost trying to find the restroom. There were no lights, but I could see room 9 at the very end. And for some reason, the door was slightly open. I walked down the hallway, thinking I'd taken a shortcut. Inside was a single bed, no sheets. I stammered something like, "Sorry, I didn't mean to. I thought this hallway was." But he interrupted me, like he'd been expecting me. He was maybe in his 50s, balding, wearing a hospital gown that looked faded and stained. Something about his tone. It was too calm. I mean, visibly pale, like someone had drained the blood from his face. He didn't even let me finish, to rehearsed. He was sitting perfectly still, hands folded on his lap, and smiling. Ever the weird part is, he looked right at me. There it was, a patient file for a man named Leonard M. He had been admitted in 1987, diagnosed with persistent delusional disorder. But what caught my attention was the discharge date. "Hi," he said. I remember just standing there, confused. "You don't have to apologize," he said. "You're the one they send. They always send one. A student. One who hasn't seen too much yet. Still open." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. "What had?" He tilted his head, that same frozen smile on his face. I started backing away. Then he said, "Ask them about me. See if they tell you the truth." I left. Fast. When I told the psychiatrist what I saw, he went pale. "Daniel," he said, "there's no patient in that room. That wing hasn't been used in years." I told him what the man said, about being sent someone, about asking the staff the truth. And then the psychiatrist looked at me, dead serious, and said, "Don't go back down there." Later that night, I looked through the hospital's archived files. Something I probably wasn't supposed to do. There wasn't one. Instead it read, "Deceased in-room suicide, 1991, the picture on the file." It was the same man I'd seen in room 9. Same smile, same eyes. That was the last night I ever volunteered for overnight rotations. I still work in medicine. But I never, ever ignore locked doors anymore. And I definitely don't trust smiles from strangers. Especially not in places where no one should be alive. This story was sent to me by Victoria L., who says it happened when she was a teenager visiting her cousin in Texas. Let's hear it in her own words. I don't think I'll ever understand what I saw that summer. It still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. The way the door creaked open on its own, the whispers I couldn't explain, and the thing I saw in that dark locked bedroom. Aunt Lydia lived in this big old farmhouse, out in rural Texas, surrounded by fields and thick woods. It was beautiful in the daytime, but terrifying after dark. The kind of place where silence feels heavy, like the walls are listening. I was 16 at the time. My parents had sent me to stay with my Aunt Lydia for 2 weeks, while they took a trip to Europe. My cousin Chloe was only a year older than me, and we'd always gotten along. The first few days were fine. We stayed up late watching movies, baking frozen pizzas, and walking around the property during the day. But on the third night, I noticed something strange. There was a door at the end of the hallway upstairs. It looked older than the others. Darker wood, brass handle, no light switch nearby. I hadn't noticed it until then, even though it was directly across from the bathroom. I asked Chloe about it. She just shrugged and said, "We call it the night room." The night room. Laughed. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, like someone walking barefoot down the hallway. I thought maybe Aunt Lydia was up. Mom says it's just for storage, but I've never seen her go in there. The way it seemed colder near it, the way I never heard any sound come from behind it. It bothered me, that door. The night room. It was open ever. "Yeah," she said. "It's always locked." That didn't sit right with me. I'm not nosy by nature, but something about the door. But slow, raspy, and low. Like someone was just inside the room, standing in the dark, waiting. I swear I wasn't trying to be brave. I was just too curious for my own good. That night, I swear I heard something. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor in Chloe's room, but then I heard the click, a doorknob turning, then creak. Not locked, just shut. The sound of a door slowly opening. I sat up. Chloe was still asleep. I slipped out of bed and crept toward the hallway. The hallway was pitch black, except for the faint glow from the bathroom nightlight. But at the end of the hall, only a few inches, but enough. And in the far corner, scratched into the wooden floorboards, was a name. I walked toward it, every instinct in me, screaming not to. When I got to the door, I heard breathing, not loud. I don't know what possessed me, but I whispered, "Hello." The breathing stopped. I stood frozen, heart racing. She was 7 years old when she vanished from her bedroom. That room in the middle of the night, they never found her. Then from inside the darkness, a voice whispered back, "Come see." I screamed. Chloe came running. Aunt Lydia flipped on the lights. But by the time they got to me, the door was shut. They thought I was sleepwalking or dreaming. But I wasn't. The next day I begged Chloe to help me open the door during daylight. She was nervous but agreed. The one that whispered from the dark and asked me to come see. We used a butter knife to pop the latch. Inside, there was nothing. It's just a dusty old bedroom with no furniture. Just an old mirror on the wall covered in a sheet. Charlotte. When Aunt Lydia found out we went in, she freaked out, said we were never to open that door again. I pressed her, I needed to know. That's when she told us. Back in the 1950s, a little girl named Charlotte had lived in the house. Some say she sleepwalked into the woods. Others think she was taken. But Aunt Lydia said her grandmother always believed Charlotte never left the room. Not really. I never slept upstairs again after that. And even now at 28, I still dream of that voice. I think if I'd stepped inside, I might not have come back out.